and also to make sure that the interviews, and this was just an admission on my part, include governance, Mayor, Chair of Infrastructure, Transport and Environment Committee, relevant councillors and myself, as well as staff, so that we get, and contractors, so that we get that full view of the process, the timelines, the things that happened over that period of time. So I'm just looking for you to consider and endorse these terms of reference.
Thank you. Yanni?
I just had a question in regards to the time frame. And given that we had assessments as a part of a rolling 5-year program, 20% a year, is that time frame sufficient enough to look at? Yeah, I'm just worried that the time frame's a bit too narrow, and just wondered why we're not going back further. In terms, again, it's looking at the process and the appropriateness of the maintenance reviews over that period of time. So in fact, we would have had reviews over that period of time between that's mentioned in the report, which will be indicative of what's happened beforehand.
It was the same contractor. So what was different last year was that the contractor changed. Going back to the month before the Havelock North incident happened, actually gives us an opportunity to look at the assessment that was done last year by the previous contractor under the sort of kind of pre-impact of the Havelock North inquiry. But mind you, when was the last assessment done?
If I can help, so my understanding for check, so the timeline going back to the Havelock North incident in early August 2016 will bring in the previous assessment. But when was it? When was the previous assessment? They're not done in blocks every year. They're spread over the year. So there are some potentially as late as mid 2017. So that they don't do the 20% in 1 month per year, is my understanding.
But they did this time.
They did a batch of them in one block, yes, but they don't do them exactly at the same time every year, only in one month.
They did 25 in 1 month, didn't they? Didn't
correct.
Becca
but
do that?
Previously, there are some prior to July, so they're captured by this time period.
I guess the reason I'm asking, if you look at, I can understand you've got the Havelock North incident in August 2016. I guess what I'd like to understand is a little bit about prior to that incident, what were they doing? And it may just be the same thing.
Yeah, I was just trying to pick up the last assessment. So maybe it should go to the.
It does.
Assessment prior to Havelock North.
So the last assessments were post the Havelock North report.
Yes, I know, but you said that they weren't all done post Havelock North. They did 20%.
So the previous round prior to the November-December ones were done post the Havelock North report, Havelock North incident.
So they might have applied. No, but you're not capturing the pre-Havelock North. So maybe take it back one more year. Yeah. Take it back to the
2015.
So they capture assessments whilst we still had secure bore status.
Yeah. Yes, I know, but only one.
That's no problem. We can take it back a year. What I want is to make sure we've got a really good view of the process, and not spend a lot of time doing extra work that we don't need to do.
But I think it's important just to know before Havelock North, what were we doing? Havelock North happens. Here's what was being done. After Havelock North, here's what was done.
So perhaps we just change under 20, the first stop point, between August 2015.
That would be great.
Yeah. Look, and I support that because I think my intention on all of this, and I agree with the Chief Executive, the focus is on getting the bore heads fixed. Nothing is to take us away from the primary focus of the work that we've directed staff to do, which is get it done as quickly as they possibly can, get them sealed and up to status so that the drinking water assessor can sign them off, medical officer of health, and we're back without chlorine in our water. So that's what we want to achieve as quickly as possible. But I think it is really important to understand all of the processes that we went through. The standard clearly changed The question I want to ask is whether we as a council, because we rely on our on compliance in those 3 material respects to comply with the drinking water standards, I think maybe it is that we have to actually have a level of service that requires a higher level of reporting on the status of the boreheads than what we have at the moment.
Just one clarification. You just said that the standard had changed.
No. I'm saying that the standard applied by the engineers
had changed.
No, by the engineers had changed. It was the fact that the engineers didn't sign off on the status when they had the previous few months. You know, so City Care was asked to do a separate report, but the previous year there were assessments done and we met the standard. They signed them off as meeting the standard. Phil, Dion.
I'm pleased to see these terms of reference, and keeping in mind that the prime objective, which is quite clear under 18, is to provide assurance for the future of Christchurch's unchlorinated water supply. So that's the focus. I am pleased to see inclusion of the important role of governance in there. One of the lessons learned from Havelock North clearly was that at governance level there wasn't communication between the 2 councils, and clearly this communication for governance for our city is going to be really important too. So I'm pleased to see these terms of reference.
Thank you.
Dion?
I just had a question around what is the procedure going to be on finding the person who's going to do the review?
Well, I've been talking to people about who's available and who has the expertise. I don't think that we need highly technical expertise, except that they could get that in if they needed it. But it's somebody who needs to understand local government processes and the requirements of local government.
And is that going to be somebody locally, or is it going to be somebody from outside?
Well, it's an independent external review, so it may be locally, but I think finding those skills may require somebody coming in who's not involved in anywhere in this process.
It may well be that because there's a audit and risk process, internal audits that are standard on different subject areas, and water was always going to be the next one to be have a deep dive into, there's appropriate language, as part of the auditing process, and that was put on hold till after the Havelock North inquiry. So it may well be that will represent an opportunity for a happy combining of the 2 approaches. So I mean, that's up to the Chief Executive, but it could well be that one process which is already looking for that appropriate level of external auditing expertise will be available.
From my perspective, it was good to make sure that somebody really outside of the situation,
outside of council, hasn't worked for council,
or
absolutely.
Even potentially in the city as well, because of the being impacted one way or another.
All right. So, were there any other matters in the Chief Executive's monthly report that people wanted to raise? Yanni? Pauline, sorry.
A quick comment on this one too, that, you know, I think this is a really good thing that we're doing, and it's not just around the water. This actually will transcend everything we do in council. This type of reporting it'll bring learnings, and I think one of the key learnings out of this is what happened in the communications. So I'm really looking forward to seeing the result of this and making sure that this type of gulf in the communication between the management and governance doesn't happen again if possible.
Thank you.
Very good. Yanni?
Just a question in terms of the litter. I note that there's reference to New Brighton and Sumner, but it has been along river corridors and other recreation spots as well. And I just wondered, you've got a comment in there that, you know, it's important that people report it, which I agree with, but I just wanted to know if we're doing any work, because part of the frustration I've had as a councillor from local constituents is that they're repeatedly reporting things that aren't being fixed, you know, through the CSR process. So is there any work going on underway just to look at the effectiveness of people reporting versus getting a response?
Sorry, so you mean in terms of customer service requests?
Yeah, like people make repeated requests for, you know,
Yeah,
the
so
bins to be littered and they're not.
So litter is a particular issue and has been obviously over the summer season, with a view that not all of it is just ordinary litter from people picnicking or things like that. You know, people have been dropping other rubbish around our bins. So they're certainly looking at how to make sure that we're responsive in terms of things, very visible things like that, such as the litter, and particularly where we expect weather events will mean that you know, more people will go and visit particular areas, or weekends and so forth. So there's some work around that. I guess in terms of CSRs, we actually have a reasonable response on CSRs. We get 50,000 a month, you know, people ringing up with particular issues. The challenge for us is when they're referred to, say, a contractor to deal with and getting the feedback of when they're dealt with or not, and then feeding that back. So that's still an issue for us. You know, there was something on potholes recently that's a good example of where, you know, it immediately goes to a contractor and we expect to have some responses. We're also looking internally about whether there are more ways that we can be responsive and proactive around some of these things. So, for example, flooding, how can we look at anticipating events? We get information, sometimes from NIWA, sometimes it's not accurate, you know, their forecasts. So how we act on those sorts of things as well. So yes, we're looking at some of those things, but we do get a large number of CSRs per month, and deal with those reasonably, accurately and promptly.
Aaron?
Just to follow on from the CSRs, because when you look at the charts each month, they tend to always be very similar. There's always certain parts of our core business that keep popping up for CSRs. As a way to reduce those, other than cutting off the phone lines, which is one way, another would be, I'd quite like to see it highlighted back to the relevant committee, and then a process of how we may reduce that particular number. Have we considered that, or
that's
could
a very
we
good idea.
look at doing that?
We could look to do that. I think that's an excellent idea.
Cool, thank you.
All right. Well, I'll move that we receive the Chief Executive's report and the other elements of the thing. Sarah, to second. Yep. I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you.